Today we're going to talk about one of the most shocking and divisive true crime cases of the last decade, the death of Jason Corbett. Jason was a loving father from Ireland who moved to America for a new life, only to meet a tragic and violent end in his own home. His story gained massive attention again in 2025 with a Netflix documentary called A Deadly American Marriage. This case involves love, family, betrayal, and a brutal killing that left 2 children orphaned. It raises big questions about self-defense, abuse, and justice. Let's dive into the full story, step by step. Jason Corbett was born and raised in Limerick, Ireland. He was described by everyone who knew him as a kind, hardworking man with a great sense of humor. In his early 30s, Jason married his first wife, Margaret Fitzpatrick, known as Mags. They had 2 beautiful children, a son named Jack and a daughter named Sarah. Life seemed perfect for the young family. But tragedy struck in November 2006 when Mags suddenly died from an asthma attack. She was just 32 years old. Jason was left heartbroken raising Jack, who was 3, and Sarah, who was only a toddler. Raising 2 young kids alone was tough for Jason. He worked as a manager in a limestone company and needed help at home. In 2008, he posted an ad for an au pair, someone to live with the family and care for the children. That's when Molly Martins entered his life. Molly was a 24-year-old American from Knoxville, Tennessee. She had studied at Clemson University, but felt lost after some personal struggles, including a miscarriage. She saw the ad and decided to move to Ireland to help Jason with Jack and Sarah. At first, it was purely professional. Molly moved in and became like a big sister to the kids. She helped with daily routines, school runs, and playtime. Jason appreciated her energy and how the children warmed to her quickly. Over time, something changed. Jason and Molly started dating. Friends say Jason felt like he was getting a second chance at happiness. Molly said Jason made her feel special and brought joy back into the home. By 2011, they were married in a beautiful ceremony, and Molly became stepmother to Jack and Sarah. Soon after, Jason got a job opportunity in the United States with his company. The family moved to North Carolina, settling in a nice suburban home on Panther Creek Court in Walbrook, near Winston-Salem. It looked like the perfect American dream. A big house in a golf community, good schools for the kids, and a blended family starting fresh. Jason thrived at work, and Molly stayed home with the children. On the outside, everything seemed happy. They posted family photos, went on vacations, and built a life together. But behind closed doors, things were not as perfect. Jason's family in Ireland noticed he seemed homesick. His sister Tracy Lynch said Jason talked about moving back to Ireland someday, so the kids could grow up near their extended family. Jason had made a will back in 2007, naming Tracy and her husband as guardians for Jack and Sarah if anything happened to him. He never changed it after marrying Molly. This became important later. Molly wanted to adopt the children officially, but Jason was hesitant. There were arguments about the future. Molly later claimed Jason became controlling and abusive over time. She said there were incidents of verbal and physical anger. However, Jason's friends and family strongly denied this, saying he was always gentle and nonviolent. The children, Jack and Sarah, would later say they never saw their dad hurt Molly. The marriage started to crack. In the summer of 2015, tensions were high. Jason was considering a move back to Ireland. Molly's parents lived nearby in Tennessee, and her father, Thomas Martins, a retired FBI agent, often visited. Thomas was protective of his daughter. Now we come to the night that changed everything. August 2nd, 2015, Thomas Martins was staying over at the Corbett home. The children, Jack, then 10, and Sarah, 8, were asleep upstairs. Around 3 a.m., Thomas called 911 in a panic. He told the dispatcher he had hit his son-in-law with a baseball bat because Jason was choking Molly. He said he might have killed him. When police arrived, they found Jason dead in the master bedroom. The scene was horrific, one of the bloodiest investigators had ever seen. Jason had been beaten severely with an aluminum baseball bat and a concrete paving brick that was on the nightstand. The autopsy later revealed at least 12 blows to the head. His skull was shattered in multiple places. Some blows were so forceful that fragments of bone fell out during the exam. There were defensive wounds on his arms and torso, but the head injuries were fatal. Anyone with several blows could have killed him or knocked him unconscious. Toxicology showed a very low alcohol level, just 0.02%, and traces of sleeping medication trazodone. Molly and Thomas both admitted to hitting Jason, but claimed self-defense. Their story was like that. Jason woke up angry in the middle of the night, started arguing with Molly about the kids, and began choking her. Thomas heard the commotion, grabbed his baseball bat from the guest room. He said he always carried one for protection, and rushed in. He saw Jason on top of Molly and hit him to stop the attack. Molly grabbed the brick to help. They said they feared for their lives. But investigators found problems with this story. There were no visible injuries on Molly's neck consistent with choking. Blood spatter suggested Jason was hit multiple times while low to the ground or in bed. Thomas's hands and shorts had spatter indicating he was standing over Jason. The room showed a violent struggle, but many wondered why so many blows if it was just to stop a threat. Why was the brick on the nightstand? And why did the call to 911 come after Jason was already dead, with no real CPR attempted until on the phone? The children were woken by police. In initial interviews with social services right after the death, Jack and Sarah said things that supported Molly's claims of abuse. They described seeing Jason get mad and hurt Molly sometimes. But years later, they recanted everything. They said Molly had coached them to say those things, preparing them for what to tell authorities. They insisted their dad was never abusive. Within days, Molly and Thomas filed for custody and guardianship of Jack and Sarah. Jason's family in Ireland fought back fiercely. Tracy Lynch flew over and with legal help brought the children back to Limerick to live with her family. The kids have been there ever since, taking the Lynch name as Corbett Lynch. In January 2016, Molly and Thomas were charged with second-degree murder. The trial in 2017 was huge, covered by media in Ireland and the U.S. Prosecutors argued it was premeditated or at least not self-defense. Motives suggested Molly feared losing the kids if Jason moved back to Ireland, and she was the beneficiary of a large life insurance policy. The brutality, 12-plus blows, didn't fit stopping a threat. The defense brought in experts on domestic abuse, saying Jason was the abuser. But the children's initial statements were ruled inadmissible in some ways. After deliberation, the jury found both guilty of second-degree murder. They were sentenced to 20 to 25 years each. Jason's family felt justice was served, but didn't end there. In 2021, an appeal succeeded because the judge excluded certain evidence, like the children's videotaped statements supporting abuse claims. Convictions overturned and new trial ordered. While awaiting retrial, both were out on bond. The case dragged on. In October 2023, to avoid another trial, they took a plea deal. Thomas pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, Molly no contest. They got sentences considering time, served effectively about 4 more years, but with credit, released in June 2024. They serve around 6 years total. The Corbett family was devastated, calling it a failure of justice. Jack and Sarah, now young adults, read powerful victim impact statements in court, saying Molly and Thomas murdered their dad and destroyed their lives. In 2025, Netflix released A Deadly American Marriage on May 9th. It features interviews with Molly, Thomas, Jack, Sarah, Tracy, and others. Molly and Thomas repeat their self-defense claim. The children powerfully share their side, saying their dad was innocent and they were manipulated. Sarah even wrote a book in 2025 called A Time for Truth, detailing her healing and belief in her father's goodness. Jack is more private, but supports the family. The documentary shows both sides, leaving viewers to decide. Was it self-defense in an abusive marriage or a brutal murder to keep control of the children and money? Public opinion is split. In Ireland, most side with Jason's family. In some U.S. circles, sympathy for Molly. Today, as of late 2025, Molly and Thomas are free after completing parole in June 2025. They live quietly in Tennessee. Jack studies music in college while Sarah pursues diving and writing. They live with Tracy and her family in Ireland, honoring their dad's memory.